Today we're going to, during our pause from reading, talk about some of the figurative language that we see in the Poet X, as it is, of course, written as a prose poem. You see a lot of figurative language. Before we start, I want you to be aware of this word here, nuance, okay? A nuance is a subtle difference in meaning or opinion or attitude. Okay, those subtle little details that can cause you to have a shift in difference, like different shades of gray, okay? We know that there's the darkest gray that looks almost like black, and then there's the lightest gray that looks almost white, and in between are all of the nuances of gray, okay? So I can say something is gray, but really there's more to it than that. What kind of gray? Okay, so when we talk about nuance, we talk about how that can change the meaning of something. So figurative language, you've been studying it for years, like ever since grade school. You can identify a simile, you can identify a metaphor, you can tell me when something uses like or as and makes a comparison, okay? And that's great, but really, just being able to identify that something is a simile is not as important as being able to describe how that gives nuances to the work. Okay, so our essential question for today is, how do writers use figurative language to give more nuanced meanings to their work? How does that figurative language add those little subtle details, those nuances, that add more meaning and help us better understand something? That's what we're going to talk about. So our objectives. When we are finished with this lesson, you will be able to, 1, identify figurative language in the Poet X, which should be pretty easy. 2, explain how figurative language is used to create nuanced meanings. And 3, examine your own favorite excerpt from the text that contains figurative language. So just as a quick review, in case you can't remember, although I'm sure you do, figurative language refers to language that uses words in ways that deviate from their literal interpretation to achieve a more complex or powerful effect. Okay? So if I say that the raccoon outside my house kicked the bucket, I don't literally mean that he kicked a bucket. Okay? Kick the bucket means died, figuratively speaking. All right? So it's when you're not being literal, you're being figurative. Figures of speech that play with the meaning of words include metaphors, similes, personification, and hyperbole. And I took this directly from litcharts.com, so I am citing it here. Okay? If you cannot remember what metaphors, similes, personification, and hyperbole are, all you have to do is click on them and find out. So, the Poet X is written in a poetry format, but a text does not have to be poetry in order to use figurative language. Most fiction, and even nonfiction, uses figures of speech in order to emphasize and give deeper meaning to characters, settings, and situations. Figurative language can also help establish a tone and atmosphere. So let's look at this first example. I took 3 examples of figurative language from the book, and I took pictures of them with my phone and uploaded them to this slideshow, okay? Because I actually have the book in front of me, so you guys have the ebook, so you can just do screenshots from your Chromebook. So it says, examine this passage from the book. What type of figurative language does it use, and what nuances does the figurative language add to the meaning of the text? So this example says, it's about her English teacher. It says, Ms. Galliano is young, has on bright colors, and wears her hair naturally curly. She is also little, like for real petite, but carries herself big. Know what I mean? Like she's used to shouldering her way through any assumptions made about her. So when we take a look at this piece, we do see a simile right here. Okay. We also see kind of imagery. It's describing what the teacher looks like. that her stature is very small. Okay? Yet, it says she carries herself big. So she seems huge when she walks into a room, even though she's really physically tiny. So what we have to think about is her size being tiny in this way that she presents herself large. And then it says, like she's used to shouldering her way, meaning like shoving something with your shoulder, okay? Shouldering her way through any assumptions made about her. So my explanation of that when I answer this question here, what type of figurative language does it use and what nuances does it add to the meaning of the text? Here's my answer. Right here. Although she is not literally a big person, Ms. Galliano is described as carrying herself big. Acevedo uses a simile that compares Ms. Galliano to someone who has to fight against what people think of her when they see a little person standing in front of them. Okay, so those assumptions would be like, we assume because she's tiny, she must not be very powerful. But she fights that every day of her life. So what does that mean? What do those nuances add? This suggests that she is strong and that she perhaps has had to struggle to establish her power in the world. The writer does not literally tell us this about her. She implies it by using a simile. Okay? So the writer, Acevedo, she doesn't say, oh, well, literally she was so tiny that she had to prove herself. Okay? She shows us that through this simile. So another example. Example 2. Again, examine this passage. What type of figurative language does it use? And what nuances does the figurative language add to the meaning of the text? So Xiomara says, I thought 10th grade would be different than 9th grade. I thought 10th grade would be different, but I still feel like a lone shrimp in a stream where too many are searching for someone with a soft shell to peel apart and crush. So again, simile. We see more simile here. She feels like a lone shrimp in a stream where too many are searching for someone with a soft shell to peel apart and crush. So what does that comparison mean? Well, when I look at this, here's what I come up with. The narrator uses simile to compare herself to a lone shrimp in a stream with a soft shell that people want to peel and crush. So the shrimp suggests she feels small, and since it is a lone one, she feels alone. The soft shell implies that she does not feel very strong. And the notion that others would want to peel her apart and crush her shows us that she feels like a victim. She feels like others are trying to harm her or even destroy her. Okay? So it's just this one sentence, yet it implies so much. Okay? So what I want you to do is not just be able to tell me, oh, well, hey, that's a simile. I want you to really think about what does that imply about her and how she feels about herself. Okay? And as I'm going through making the screencast for you, I'm noticing all of my typos. Okay. So, third example, and then I'm going to give you an assignment, let you roll with it. This one, she's talking about her relationship with her boy, her crush. She says, in science we learned that thermal conductivity is how heat flows through some materials better than others. But who knew words, when said by the right person, by a boy who raises your temperature, could heat like nothing else? Shoot a shock of warmth from your curls to your toes. So she's not literally being shocked, right? She's not literally warming up. There's no more body heat in her than there was before she walked in the room, right? So this is figurative language. What we really see here is her using a metaphor. She doesn't say that her feelings for him are like thermal conductivity. She's saying they are, okay? So here the narrator uses metaphor to compare her crush to thermal conductivity, the science of how heat transfers from one object to another. She says that the boy raises her temperature and shoots warmth from her curls to her toes. She is comparing her interactions with him to the scientific transfer of heat. Okay? So, this suggests that the boy, who cannot literally raise her body temperature, at least not much, gives her the warm fuzzies and makes her feel positive vibes. It also suggests, as we say in popular vernacular, that he is hot. He's a hottie. And he makes her feel hot too. Okay? So I think that it's also interesting, and I will kind of move my little thing here so you can see this. He's also her lab partner in science class, so the scientific metaphor is really fitting because that's what they're studying, and she starts to apply it to, oh my gosh, this is how I feel about this super hot boy. All right? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to do this. You're going to try this. I want you to identify the figurative language in the following examples. That's the next couple slides here. And explain how it gives nuanced meaning to the text. Here's the first one. You're going to answer these two questions. One, what type of figurative language is being used? Man, you guys, I'll be honest, it was like Friday night and I couldn't sleep. So when I typed this, it was like 1 in the morning or something. So I am sorry. I'm fixing it now. So what type of figurative language is being used? And then tell me what nuances does the figurative language add to the meaning of the text. So that's where you're going to give me a little paragraph. This passage says, I wanted to tell her that if Aman were a poet, or a poem, should I say poem, sorry I got cut off, he'd be written slumped across the page, sharp lines and a witty punchline written on a bodega brown paper bag. Okay, if Aman were a poem, he'd be written slumped across the page, sharp lines and a witty punchline written on a bodega brown paper bag. The other one is, every time I think about Aman, poems build inside of me like I've been gifted a box of metaphor Legos that I stack and stack and stack. I keep waiting for someone to knock them over, but no one at home cares about my scribbling. So what figurative language do you see here, and what nuances does it add to the meaning? So you look at 2 that I've picked for you, and then on the last slide, you're going to choose your own. So I want you to choose a favorite passage from the Poet X that uses figurative language and either type it here in the text box or take a screenshot of it and just paste it here. Tell me what kind of figurative language is being used, and then write a paragraph about how that figurative language adds nuanced meaning to the story. Okay? And then starting tomorrow, we are going to resume reading part 3. So I want you to please, please, please renew your book if you haven't already, because by now you can only borrow them for 3 weeks at a time. So by now you are coming up on your book, I don't know, being returned. I guess that it's like virtually returned, so you can't read it anymore. So again, please renew it. And if you have problems figuring out how to do that on Libby, then you know what, just call the library and ask them, because they can give you a quick answer, okay? But if you just go to the book in Libby, there should be a button that says renew, all right? So have fun with it. See you later.